Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're not just looking at a story, we are literally stepping into a graveyard. I want you to imagine, just for a second, seeing the universe through white, sightless eyes, eyes that only reflect rigid, cold geometry. Picture yourself as a hollow last man, welcoming a traveler to the graveyard of the cosmic mind. That's the melancholic myth we're unraveling today. It's a grim fable about what happens when absolute reason destroys the very life it tries to organize. So let's just dive right into it.
Have you ever craved just perfect security? That deeply human desire to make sure absolutely nothing can ever go wrong? Well, beneath that desire lies a pretty horrifying cost. Order without freedom is merely a beautifully designed tomb. This one sentence completely exposes the dark bargain at the very heart of our fable. In their desperate quest to build a sanctuary totally safe from decay, the architects of this universe accidentally built their own mausoleum.
To actually understand how an entire cosmos falls into ruin, we have to look at the engine driving this story, the Fichtean dialectic. Now I know that sounds like a super dry academic concept, but here it's the literal, tragic mechanism that dooms a whole universe to eternal stasis. It goes like this. We have a thesis, which is the wild, messy chaos of life. Then an antithesis, which is the crushing weight of pure logic. And finally, their collision creates a synthesis, which is, well, the void itself. Let's start with that initial spark, the thesis.
Our fable kicks off with the master architects. The text describes beings like Cynos as pale parasites. These entities were born from the geometric, flawless web of the cosmic mind. And when they looked at the erratic beauty of creation, the wild freedom of the stars, they didn't see a miracle. No way. In a twisted feat of absolute structural arrogance, they looked at life and saw a disease. To them, the unpredictable mutation of life was just a flaw that urgently needed to be excised with their cold Apollonian blade.
Think about what is actually at stake when that Apollonian blade is drawn. The vibrant vocabulary of life, we're talking pulsing hearts, searching eyes, the literal songs of the world, is brutally traded for the vocabulary of the tomb, rotating iron teeth, cold clockwork, the perfect, silent hum of a gear. These architects cleaved away the erratic beauty of the stars to build a dead kingdom. A place where nothing can ever go wrong, sure, but tragically, where nothing can ever truly happen.
This cosmic dread ultimately triggered the fall of the master architect himself. Back in year zero, consumed by this terrifying fear of decay, he resolved to build a monolith of reason that would absolutely never bend or rot. Fast forward to year one, and he dons a crimson mask, this Apollonian gasket of absolute certainty. He drapes himself in burning runes to literally command the stars to obey his syntax. To guarantee absolute security, he even tied his disciples together with golden chains. He stood atop the maw, entirely convinced he had mastered the teeth of madness. But as the final star flickered out within his lattice, he didn't become a savior, no. The mask became his actual flesh, and his soul was grafted to a permanent, unblinking agony. The so-called architect of meaning was reduced to a submissive witness to his own ruin.
So how exactly did they build this cosmic cage? That brings us to our antithesis. The architect's structural arrogance wasn't just some vague philosophy. It manifested into three very distinct architectures. We call them the three pillars of ruin. These pillars were purposefully designed to enforce an unbreakable logical cage of stasis. They're the exact mechanisms that translated a living, breathing universe into anonymous ash. This dark architecture relies on three pillars that eerily mirror the tragic fall of the architect himself. Just as he bound his disciples in golden chains and grafted his soul to a mask, these pillars systematically bind and erase the universe. We have the Faustian anti-scholar, the Alb, and the Sandman. Each one has a highly specific, totally devastating method designed to hollow out existence. Let's break down how each of these terrors actually functioned out there in the cosmos, starting with the anti-scholar.
The first pillar centers around the Lord Chamberlain, the High Inquisitor of Ethel-Logos, and it's almost absurd, really, his terminal naivety. Picture the sheer, morbid fascination of a man who genuinely believed a perfect grammar could outlast the stars themselves. As the grammatical fabric of reality literally unraveled around him, he simply cataloged the screams of his kin as data points of biological panic. He performed what the texts call the murder of the adjective. He stripped all semantic weight, things like honor, triumph, joy, from existence, until his homeland became just a hollow, dead noun, and in the end, he successfully corrected his vibrant city into anonymous, ungrammatical ash.
The really crucial point here is that his pure logic severed words from reality entirely. He thought he was writing a perfect page, but instead he created a completely blank one. As this quote perfectly captures, the will to truth was a serpent that revealed only a vast, terrifying silence beneath the syllables. The semantic erosion was so absolute that the very names of things began to unravel right out of the soil. The unwriter stripped existence down until there was literally nothing left to say.
Then we have the second pillar, the Alb, sometimes called the Night Fiend. This entity's sole purpose was to crush human striving through cynical logic and sheer resentment. It sits heavily upon the chest of humanity, literally draining their breath and dreams to prevent the vitality of self-overcoming. By crushing the ascending spirit, the Iron Alb enforces a hollow, universal equality fueled by envy. It ensures that no one can ever strive for higher goals or look down upon the architects. It leaves everyone equal, but equal only in the dirt.
And finally, the third pillar, the Sandman. This figure is an agent of corrupted enlightenment, and he offers a terrifying dark bargain. To cure what he calls the agony of choice, you just have to give up your humanity. Simple as that. You trade your searching eyes for cold, mechanical clockwork. You replace your pulsing heart with rotating iron teeth. The friction, the struggle, the beautiful mess of human existence is entirely traded away for the flawless, unchanging rhythm of industry.
Which brings us to the final chilling resolution of our Fichtean dialectic. The thesis of wildlife and the antithesis of pure logic crash together to form the synthesis, the mechanical void. This is a catastrophic flattening of existence. By using logic, industry, and forbidden knowledge to still the grammar of the stars, the universe finally reaches absolute compliance. But it simultaneously reaches absolute nothingness.
So what does it actually look like to live in this synthesis? Well, you become one of the last man Übermenschen. Imagine just standing there, physically invincible, yet entirely hollow inside. Your sightless eyes can no longer perceive beauty. They only reflect the rigid geometry of the cosmic mind. I really want you to hear this as a warning. When you trade your restless soul for artificial stasis, it's the terminal failure of human reason. You survive, sure, but only as a pale grammarian of a graveyard.
And this brings us right to the reality of the logical tomb itself. The sources describe it as a state of stagnation indistinguishable from death, where the sound of the void finally winning is the only truth. You know, Sinos might find a stark, beautiful clarity in this flawless void, but he is left as the solitary ruler of a graveyard, defined entirely by a deafening, geometric silence.
So what are the big takeaways from this mythic confessional? First, absolute rationalism inevitably destroys exactly what it seeks to protect. A system built for absolute compliance has literally no defense against rot. Second, order without freedom doesn't create a utopia, it just creates a beautiful grave. And third, the trap of absolute rationalism requires extinguishing the very friction that makes life worth living in the first place. It's an incredibly stark warning against the fatal allure of the cosmic cage.
We've seen how the structural arrogance of the architects translated a living universe into an unalterable stasis. We've witnessed the fall of the architect, totally consumed by the mask he wore to conquer his own dread. So I'm going to leave you with this provocative thought as we wrap up our explainer today. When faced with the erratic, wild, and sometimes painful chaos of your own life, will you too trade the agony of choice for a deafening geometric silence?